You think you know all the cars, the laughs, and the wild stunts in the Dukes of Hazzard? Think again. Behind those smiles were explosive fights between actors and producers, props catching fire, and a network terrified of the monster it had created. For decades, CBS buried the chaos and rewrote history. But now the truth is out. 12 weird facts about the Dukes of Hazzard that will leave you absolutely shocked. Fact 1. The walkout that nearly wrecked Hazzard County. By 1982, the Dukes of Hazzard was a money machine. The lunchboxes, the toy cars, the t-shirts, all selling like moonshine on a Saturday night. Everyone was getting rich, except the two men whose faces were on everything. John Schneider and Tom Wopat had played Bo and Luke Duke for years, and they'd had enough. The network kept promising next season, next deal, next bonus. The next never came. So one day, the cousins of Hazzard just didn't show up for work. They simply vanished. CBS panicked. The studio scrambled and shoved in two replacements, Coy and Vance Duke. Same hair, same car, half the charisma. But fans weren't fooled. Ratings dropped 30% in weeks. Children mailed angry letters. Some even mailed back toys demanding the real Dukes. It took nearly a year and a mountain of lost profits before the studio caved. Finally, CBS had no choice but to crawl back, offering bigger checks and better contracts. Schneider and Wopat came back to applause and smirks, but something had changed. Behind the smiles, there was distrust, a silent reminder that Hollywood loyalty ends where the money does. Fact 2. Uncle Jesse's secret fortune. On screen, Uncle Jesse was the salt of the earth. All bib overalls, beard, and Bible quotes. The man could fix a truck, a broken heart, and a moral lesson all before supper. But behind that country wisdom was something no one saw coming. Uncle Jesse was loaded. Denver Pyle, the actor behind the role, wasn't living off moonshine or TV money. He was knee-deep in oil speculation. Back in the 60s, while everyone else was buying stocks, he was quietly buying up abandoned oil wells in Texas. Wells that everyone said were dry. Then the 1973 oil crisis hit. Overnight, Pyle's junk land turned into gold. By the time the Dukes of Hazzard premiered, he was already a millionaire. He once joked, "Acting gives me cash flow for oil speculation." And besides, I like acting. It's fun. So while Uncle Jesse preached simplicity on TV, Denver Pyle was out-negotiating real oil barons and running a children's charity called Uncle Jesse's Fishing Tournament that raised millions. The beard said Backwoods Wisdom. The bank account said Texas Oil King. Fact 3. The lie that made Bo Duke a legend. Before Bo Duke ever jumped a fence, John Schneider was just an 18-year-old kid from Mount Kisco, New York. When he heard CBS was casting for a Georgia good old boy with grit, he knew he didn't fit the part, so he did something very un-Bo-like. He lied. He borrowed a dented pickup, rolled up unshaven, cracked open a beer, and swaggered into the audition like he'd just come off a dirt road. "Name's John, from Snailville, Georgia," he said. And you know Snailville, that doesn't even exist. The producers were enchanted by the drawl, the confidence, the mud on his boots. They hired him on the spot. There was just one problem. He couldn't drive a stick, much less a stunt car. On his first week, he had to be taught how to handle the General Lee between takes. But when the cameras rolled, he was Bo Duke. Fearless grin, reckless charm, and that southern twang he built out of thin air. The show made him a household name, but the secret always followed him. Bo Duke was fiction twice over. The character was a country hero. The actor was a New York kid pretending to be one. And somehow, that lie became the heart of a Southern legend. Fact 4. The deadly stunts that cost more than cars. On TV, the General Lee was a flying orange miracle, defying gravity, physics, and reason. B. But behind those shots was one of the most brutal stunt schedules in TV history. Over 300 Dodge Chargers met their death on that set. Every jump you saw on Friday night meant another car that never came back down the same. Mechanics would weld two wrecked frames together, patch the paint, and send it flying again the next week. It was beautiful chaos. Until it wasn't. Accidents happened constantly. Bones broke. Cars flipped the wrong way. And in 1980, tragedy struck when Rodney Mitchell, a young camera assistant, died after a truck slid off the road in wet Georgia mud. It shook the crew to their core. After that, the crew moved differently. Slower, quieter, always aware that the danger was real. But the show didn't back off. Fans wanted jumps, and Hollywood delivered. By the final season, local junkyards were stripped bare trying to find replacement Chargers. So the show pushed on. CGI didn't exist. The only thing between safety and disaster was a seatbelt, some courage, and a prayer. Those drivers weren't just stuntmen. They were daredevils risking everything for a few seconds of screen glory. So next time you watch the General Lee sail through the air, remember, that wasn't movie magic. That was gravity, horsepower, and a crew crazy enough to beat them both. Fact 5. The surviving General Lees worth more than gold. Out of those 300 cars that died gloriously for TV, only about 17 to 20 real General Lees are confirmed to survive today. Each one is treated like a relic, a piece of pop culture scripture wrapped in orange paint and nostalgia. Do you know their value? Astronomical. A genuine screen-used General Lee can fetch $250,000 to $500,000, depending on its condition and how many jumps it survived. In 2012, golfer Bubba Watson bought Lee 1, the original car from the pilot episode, for $110,000. He stores it in a climate-controlled garage, untouched, like a piece of Americana too sacred to drive. Even replicas have become gold. In 2008, John Schneider sold his own personally built General Lee for $230,000. It wasn't even used on the show, just owned by Bo Duke himself, and collectors went crazy. Funny thing, though, the same car once considered disposable is now worth more than most people's homes. The General Lee started as a prop and ended as a monument. Fact 6. How the General Lee became a cultural minefield. When the Dukes of Hazzard aired in 1979, nobody thought twice about the giant Confederate flag painted on the roof of the General Lee. Back then, it was sold as a symbol of Southern pride, rebellion, independence, and a middle finger to authority. The audience cheered every time that horn blasted Dixie. Fast forward a few decades, and that same symbol has become toxic. Reruns were pulled from networks. Toy replicas of the General Lee vanished from stores. Warner Brothers quietly scrubbed the flag from merchandise. Suddenly, nostalgia had become controversy. John Schneider, who was Bo Duke, tried to explain. To us, that car never stood for hate. It stood for fighting the system. But in today's world, context doesn't always survive history. The car that once united families on Friday nights had become a lightning rod for debate. The General Lee, a car meant to represent freedom, is now locked away, hidden behind disclaimers and corporate fear. Fans still defend it, others condemn it. But everyone agrees on one thing. No one expected a painted flag to outlive the show and divide the country decades later. Fact 7. The scandalous shorts that changed TV forever. When Catherine Bach walked onto the Dukes of Hazzard set in 1979 wearing her now legendary denim cutoffs, she nearly caused a meltdown at CBS headquarters. Executives were horrified. The shorts were shorter than television had ever dared. Too provocative for family viewing, one censor warned. The network demanded she wear knee-length versions or hide her legs under pantyhose. Bach refused. She argued that Daisy wasn't a bimbo. She was confident, independent, and knew exactly how to use her charm without apology. After days of debate, CBS relented on one condition. She would wear flesh-colored pantyhose underneath, invisible on camera but enough to calm anxious executives. The compromise worked. And then it backfired spectacularly. When the episode aired, audiences went wild. Viewers saw charisma, freedom, and a woman owning her image. Stores across America sold out of cut-off denim overnight. People magazine reported in 1980 that sales of Levi's and Wrangler women's shorts spiked nearly 30%. The term Daisy Dukes entered pop culture lexicon, turning a costume choice into a global fashion statement. Behind the glamour, though, Bach felt the weight of her creation. Reporters obsessed over her body, not her acting. Paparazzi hounded her. Tabloids fixated on her legs. Yet she handled it with grace, often saying, "If it makes women feel confident, I'm proud of it." Daisy Duke's shorts didn't just scandalize America. They redefined it. What began as a costume battle became a cultural revolution, one pair of jeans at a time. Fact 8. The Lost Georgia Episodes. Too real for Hollywood. Before Hollywood took over, the Dukes of Hazzard was the real deal, filmed on actual Georgia backroads, dripping with red clay, humidity, and southern grit. The first 5 episodes weren't the shiny, cartoonish show fans remember. They were darker, dirtier, and frankly more authentic. Locals were hired as extras. The cars were real beat-up Chargers, not polished studio props. Even the jokes had a sharper edge. Adult humor, raw language, and an energy that felt like Smokey and the Bandit with a hangover. But when Warner Brothers saw those early episodes, they panicked. It was too real, too southern, too risky, so they did what Hollywood always does. They sanitized it. Production packed up from Georgia and moved to California. The red clay was replaced with studio dust, the grit with gloss. And that little bar where Daisy served beer and the boys got into fights? It's still standing in Covington, Georgia. Only now, it's a church. Yep. The Boar's Nest became the Deliverance Christian Tabernacle. Fact 9. The man who could drive on 2 wheels. If you've ever seen the General Lee balance perfectly on 2 tires and thought, that's impossible, you're half right. It was impossible. For everyone except one man. His name was Buzz Bundy, a stunt driver so skilled the industry called him the human gyroscope. He could take a 3,000-pound Dodge Charger, tilt it up on its driver's side, and keep it rolling like it was on rails. Bundy compared it to being right or left-handed. He could only do it with the driver's side in the air, never the passengers. The producers didn't care. They rewrote scripts, changed camera angles, even flipped chase directions just to fit Buzz's handedness. Every time you saw a car glide down a country road on 2 wheels, that was him. No CGI, no safety nets, just one wrong twitch away from disaster. And here's the kicker. He pulled off the same stunt on Knight Rider, The Fall Guy, and half a dozen action films. But none became as legendary as the orange blur of Hazzard County. Fact 10. The song that outsold the show. You can't even say the words, "The Dukes of Hazzard," without hearing it. Just a good old boys. That voice belonged to Waylon Jennings, the outlaw country hero who didn't just sing the theme. He was the narrator of the show. What most people forget is that the song itself became a full-blown hit. Theme from the Dukes of Hazzard shot straight to #1 on the Billboard Country Chart in 1980 and even cracked the Pop Top 40. Jennings wrote it in a few hours, sitting with his guitar between takes. He never meant for it to be a single. But once the show exploded, radio stations started spinning it like wildfire. Suddenly, a TV theme was topping charts, something unheard of at the time. The song gave the Dukes real cultural weight. It wasn't just a sitcom anymore. It was a Southern anthem about pride, rebellion, and brotherhood. Even decades later, country stars from Travis Tritt to Shooter Jennings, Waylon's son, still perform it live. By the time the final episode aired, the song had outlived the show itself. It still plays at car meets, bar rooms, and backyard BBQs. Proof that sometimes the soundtrack becomes bigger than the story. That's why those early episodes feel like they belong to a different show. Because they do. Fact 11. the forgotten movie that gave birth to Hazzard County. Long before Bo and Luke were flying through the air in their orange Charger, there was a 1975 film called Moonrunners. Gritty, violent, and way too real for TV. It was written and directed by Guy Waldron, the same man who later created The Dukes of Hazzard. And when you watch it now, you realize something eerie. It's basically the Dukes before the jokes, before the network polish, before innocence. The movie was darker, meaner, and bloodier. Uncle Jesse dies. The cousins use explosive arrows. There's a love affair gone wrong. No freeze frames, no slow-motion smiles, just real consequences. When CBS wanted a family show, Waldron took that blueprint, cleaned it up, and wrapped it in humor. Of course, the results was amazing. A Saturday night classic that looked wholesome but was born from something much rougher. So remember that Hazzard County started as a crime movie about bootlegging, betrayal, and blood. Fact 12. The animated Dukes nobody wanted to remember. By 1983, the show had jumped every bridge it could find, literally. So CBS decided to do the one thing no one asked for, a cartoon. It was called The Dukes, and it was as weird as it sounds. The Dukes, Roscoe, and Boss Hogg enter a global car race. France, Egypt, Fiji, all of them, somehow, reachable by the General Lee. Each week, they'd compete in ridiculous challenges while Uncle Jesse stayed home reading letters from a raccoon. Yes, a raccoon named Smokey. But what is the real punchline? When the cartoon launched, John Schneider and Tom Wopat were still on strike over their contract. So their characters were replaced by the infamous Coy and Vance Duke, the off-brand cousins no one liked. Kids tuned in and immediately knew something was wrong. The voices were off. The charm was gone. It felt like watching a parody of a show that wasn't trying to be funny. When the original actors finally returned to the live-action series, the cartoon limped into a second season, swapped the voices back, and then vanished without a goodbye. The animation looked cheap, the stories were nonsense, and yet there's something sweet about how hard they tried to keep the Duke magic alive, even if the world just wasn't buying it. So now you know the wild truth behind the Dukes of Hazzard, secrets CBS never wanted you to hear. Which of these shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.